In both his teaching and his scholarship, Harvey's really modeled a way of approaching the most profound and consequential human questions that takes real pleasure, a kind of evident delight in the depth and complexity of those questions.
In addition to being a political philosopher, Mansfield is a political scientist, perhaps the leading Aristotelian political scientist of our time, perhaps therefore the leading political scientist of our time.
He made the nuts and bolts of everyday American politics interesting to me as never before. Certainly, I had never met a teacher so gifted at demonstrating the profundity of the prosaic.
Of his various funny remarks, both written and spoken, one has always stood out to me. The final sentence of his note on the translation in his edition of The Prince, where he says, and I quote, "If the reader thinks my translation a bad one, let him try his own. If he thinks it good, let him learn Italian."
Whenever he interpreted any great work, he taught his students by example to read it with fresh eyes, to wonder why and how one chapter, one paragraph led to another, to gauge what was said and what left unsaid.
If Machiavelli's teachings are intended for those on the continuum from private individual to prince, why does Harvey not follow the advice of the man whom he understands so well and admires? As Socrates tells Glaucon and Adeimantus, I infer this from his character because I have known him as nothing but a generous and kind teacher and friend, and not because he made sure to keep the opposites of those virtues close at hand just to generate the impression of goodness, but because this is who he is.
In saying that he stood with Locke in the short run and Aristotle in the long run, Harvey silently raised but did not answer an intriguing question. With whom does he stand in the intermediate run? The answer, I'm guessing, is Tocqueville.
There's a remark that Tocqueville makes in the introduction where he describes his own vantage point on politics. He aspires to see not differently, but further than the parties. And I've always thought that Professor Mansfield aspired to that too.
In Harvey's work on America, do you read Harvey's thinking about the institutions and the spirit of the country and leave it hopeful in this moment, or does it lead you to worry about where in the world we're headed?
We have to think about what caused the populist surge. And what caused the populist surge, it seems to me, is a perception grounded in reality that the elites have hijacked our institutions, not least our educational institutions, and those institutions have been turned against the fundamental principles of the country.
A lot of our impatience today comes from the fact that there doesn't seem to be any creative statesmanship that has found a way forward that honors constitutionalism and reinvigorates constitutionalism.
Should we think of the Declaration of Independence as a manly document, and if so, how?
The Declaration does demand manly virtue. It's left to human beings to vindicate and secure the rights that belong to us by nature. But the Declaration of Independence also restrains manliness, because those human beings who hazard their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor act not for themselves alone, but for all and in the name of all.
The thumos arises from you're trying to get rid of the obstacle, and you can't forget the obstacle. You can't stop fighting that obstacle. You can't let go. And that's what makes you thumotic and a fighter, but it's a weak.
Harvey's writings, I discovered, present a better way of thinking about the modern tradition of freedom. He is among our sharpest critics of liberalism and, at the same time, among our shrewdest defenders of it.
The hope is that the Conservative Party can be what Tocqueville would have thought of as aristocratic in a way. In other words, that it can be the party of virtue.
We need the land of virtue, partly for this reason, because we need to be able to appreciate the character of liberalism, but also because liberalism doesn't say enough about what human beings can think, and do with excellence.